a lot of historical analogies have been made. Some have called this the 9/11 for Israel. Some have called this their Pearl Harbor moment. But I think if you look at the analysis by anyone who's familiar with the realities on the ground, they would say that those analogies are not proper in a sense that this was not entirely unexpected, as shocking as it was on the emotional and psychological level. Concerns about these kinds of attacks are something that Israel has been living with for quite some time. So many are asking questions, including the critics and people in opposition to Israel. They're asking questions: how could this happen to Israel when it has supposedly one of the most sophisticated surveillance and military defense capabilities on Earth? Because you saw coordinated attacks from sea, from land, from air. This is something that has not happened for a long time, at least since the Second Intifada, quite a long time ago. So there are many questions about what went wrong in terms of Israel's preparedness for something that many saw as not completely unexpected.
But why do you say that? Why do you believe it's not entirely unexpected, seeing as, well, I mean, it did catch Israel completely off guard?
Well, I mean, militant organizations like Hamas, among others, have been threatening retaliation, have been threatening, ways of getting back at Israel for the situation that the Palestinian people have been facing. So if you look at the peace process, the so-called two-state solution, it has not been going anywhere. And in fact, over the past year or so, there was a lot of tension between Palestinians and the Israelis over a whole host of issues, including some of the clashes that happened in Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is considered one of the most holy sites for the Muslim people. So tensions have been building up for quite some time, except I think the attention was quite distracted because of also the situation that is happening in Israel. As you may know, there have been massive months-long protests in Israel against judicial reform by the right-wing Netanyahu administration. And some are wondering whether the internal situation in Israel, including many people in the security establishment criticizing the government, and the government relying on people who are not supposed to, or not supposedly the best people to be in charge of the security agency, whether this has contributed to the to the ability of Hamas groups to conduct this highly unexpected for some people kind of operations. Well, this has huge geopolitical implications because over the past few years, Israel has been normalizing ties under the Abraham Accords with a number of Arab countries. And more recently, there were discussions about even possible normalization of ties, something that many thought was unthinkable not long ago between Saudi Arabia and Israel. So there were hopes under the Biden administration to essentially seal that deal, and there were conversations behind the scenes whether what could America give Saudis in order for them to normalize ties with Israel. Now all of that is essentially out of the window. At least that's the fear of a lot of people. And at the same time, when it comes to the other dimensions of this conflict, I mean, you have countries like Russia and China also not categorically condemning one side, but essentially calling for the restoration of two-state solutions. Even here in Southeast Asia, we have countries like Malaysia, for instance, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim openly emphasizing that you have to look at the root of the problem, which is the dispossession and the situation of millions of Palestinians in the occupied territory. So this is not just about between the United States or countries like Iran. I mean, there are very diverse responses that we're seeing from other major powers, including Russia and China, but also in our region, Malaysia and Indonesia have very different take on this conflict compared to, say, the Philippines, which has more or less squarely stood behind Israel.
In terms of the coverage of this, Richard, which some are saying is a bit of a double standard because lots of countries, including the U.S., including the European Union, including the Philippines even, condemned the attacks, the surprise attacks on Israel, but have not condemned the retaliation by Israel, even though it has also killed hundreds of civilians.
Well, first of all, let's not forget, this is not a war between two nation states, right? Hamas is a non-state organization in occupied territories. So there's definitely a legal and geopolitical reality to that. It's not like two equal, conventional military forces going against each other. So even the Ukraine-Russia conflict may not be comparable here. The other thing we have to keep in mind is also the notion of proportionality, right? As much as, some people would say there's a right to self-defense here, let's not forget that, we have millions of people in occupied territories who do not have much of option. When you have leaders in Israel saying, we're asking people to get out of certain areas, I mean, realistically, where are these people supposed to go? Because, they're locked into the occupied territories like Gaza. So this makes this a very complicated situation. And perhaps at the human level, the best you can say is we have to care about all human lives. Innocent people, children, civilians, wherever they're located. That's I think that has to be clear. And we have to also closely follow the civilian casualties and effect on civilian population in the occupied territories, because ordinary people don't have a say in this. That's the unfortunate thing, and we have to have sympathy, and we have to look at the situation for civilians and children, no matter what their creed or nationality or their geopolitical situation is.